different parts of the world with me, and I was so confused. Like, even when I was at the detention center, I was like, "What is this?" I was at the detention center, and they weren't telling me that I was at a detention center.
Wow.
I was like, "Guys, so what is this?" And I would ask the women. None of them spoke English, so they were asking me, and I was asking them, and I'm like, "Okay, the communication is not even there." The room was freezing cold, the intake room we were in, and every time we would tell them to lower, turn up the heat or to acknowledge us, give us water, um, they would close the door and lock it and shut up, like, we don't want to hear you. Gosh, we already have so much on our plate. Um, it was insane. Like, I was put in a uniform. I literally look like a criminal. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I'm like, okay. And I would ask questions, and they would treat me like a big dummy. And I'm like, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're doing. And mind you, a lot of the women that were in the intake room with me only spoke Spanish. And this happened multiple times at different transfers, by the way. I was transferred to 3 facilities, and at all the intakes, the staff would literally talk crap about the women that are inside at the intake room, talking about how they keep talking too much, they won't shut up, shut up, shut up. And just, it was terrible. Like,
You mentioned that you were moved to 3 facilities, and I believe they tried to deport you twice, the Trump administration, once on June the 11th, once on June the 30th, with one attempt being called off as you were on the tarmac. Where were they deporting you to, and how did you avoid getting deported? Do you know?
yeah, so the first time I was getting deported, I didn't even know I was getting deported. I had no clue what was going on. I just thought it was a transfer from El Valle to Prairie Land. And it's so funny because I was the only one in the intake room. Mind you, the facility has over 1,000 people. And I was the only one in the intake room. I'm like, crazy how they would spend all this money just to like transfer one person. Because nobody told me nobody told me I was getting deported the day before. And they would usually give the girls a heads up, like, hey, you're getting deported.
Where were they deporting you to? Do you know?
Excuse me, repeat that.
Where were they deporting you to? Do you know?
I found out on the day that I was getting deported that I was going to be at the Israeli border. And from the Israeli border, Israel was supposed to let me into Palestine and, Daffa and Ramallah or whatever I'm supposed to go. And I did tell them multiple times, hey guys, I don't know how to operate. I don't even know what to do in there. I did ask multiple times on the bus, under which document will I be traveling to Israel under? They don't know. They're like, it's whatever document your ICE officer put in. And I was like, can I see it? And till this day, by the way, I still don't know under which document I was supposed to be deported under. And yeah, that was the first time it happened, the deportation. And they told me the deportation didn't go through because Israel bombed Iran and we were going to be deported.
It's America, where you get deported for looking like you don't belong here. That's fucking crazy. Like I'm trying to figure out on what basis, like what grounds did they use to actually to deport her? Like I'm like, did they just see her? I guess the way she's dressed and was like, yo, we gotta check and see if she's actually illegal. Like, what the fuck? I mean, I guess that's the craziest part about it.
Protesters marching across Israel today demanding that the government agree to a ceasefire hostage release deal with Hamas. They are blocking major roads in what protest leaders are calling a day of struggle. Families of the hostages want to know why the government hasn't responded to the latest ceasefire hostage release proposal that Hamas accepted last week. Well, the family of hostage Nimrod Cohen released a video of his abduction on October the 7th, 2023, to show their opposition to the government's refusal to sign a deal and to its plans to expand the war in Gaza. Well, a short time ago, I spoke to Amy Dror, a protest leader in Israel. He joined us from Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Have a listen.
Yeah, so first of all, it's a day that was called on by the families of the hostages, and we joined by blocking the highways, blocking the houses of the MPs, and demanding something very basic: the immediate end of the war, the release of all the hostages, and the end of the atrocities in Gaza. Every poll in Israel shows that 80% of Israelis want this. And our goal is to convince our government that doesn't even answer to the Hamas proposal right now. And that's very tragic, especially for the hostages, but also for our soldiers and to every person here in Israel and in Gaza.
We've seen these protests gain momentum, of course, over the past few months, and yet no change, of course, from the Benjamin Netanyahu government. They are yet to respond to the current ceasefire proposal. Qatar has said today that the, quote, ball is in Israel's court. Do you believe there's any possibility that the Prime Minister will change his maximalist approach, given the protests that we are seeing, where you are giving the pressure from the rest of the world?
Sadly, it's a political war. It's a political war that the main goal of this war is to keep Netanyahu in his office. He fears his coalition more than anybody else. He fears the coalition more than the families, more than the protesters. And as I said, every poll show it. I do believe that with the pressure that will come from the people of Israel stopping the country, plus with the pressure that should come from the rest of the world, demanding the immediate end of the war from Prime Minister Netanyahu, I believe if all those things happen together, yes, the war can end now. I do believe that President Trump, if he wanted to, he could have stopped the war today exactly as he did with the Israeli bombers on the way to Iran. It's on his shift and it's on Netanyahu's shift, but both of them, they don't really care about the people or about the hostages, and they need to make the right choice and simply demand some simple things that everybody, like 80% of us, demand. Definitely, most of the people in Gaza demand the same thing.
So what is your message to President Trump today?
Do exactly what you did with Iran. Pick up your phone, call Prime Minister Netanyahu, and tell him, stop the war now, agree to the hostages deal, end atrocities like we saw yesterday in the hospital in Khan Yunis, end it now. And you know, the U.S. is the greatest supporter of Israel. Anything from financial, armed, diplomacy, President Trump can do it in one day, and I really hope he will pick up the phone and end the war and bring peace to this region.
I mean, you know and understand.
Yeah, but we all know that's not going to happen. Again, like both Bibi Netanyahu and Trump are in the same boat. So long as there's a war going on in Israel or there's a genocide, Bibi Netanyahu doesn't have to step down. Again, because Bibi Netanyahu knows that if he steps down, or this war is over, or this genocide, or there's a peace agreement, he's probably going to go to prison. He's going to be tried, he's going to lose power, and everybody's going to go after him like Saddam. Donald Trump, on the other hand, had no skin in the game. Although he promised to end the war in Gaza, or I guess he said it would be the easiest one to end, but no. I think that what Donald Trump sees is like he'll only get involved if he's able to put resorts in Gaza. If that's not on the table, he wants to be able to put resorts in Gaza, and he wants the neighboring countries to pay for it. So.
And Prime Minister Netanyahu, better than most. You wrote recently in a piece for the Statesman, quote, he knows that if he leaves office now, he will go down as the most catastrophic leader in Israeli history. He is nothing like Churchill or Bismarck. Great leaders prevent the situations like the one Israel finds itself in today. Israel is facing increased pressure from so many areas, not least those, once again, protesting with you today at home. Do you believe he can even preserve a decent legacy at this point?
I honestly think that what happened on October 7th, as we call it, the Netanyahu massacre, will always be part of his legacy. But he does have the option to end the war, bring back the hostages, bring some decency to his last days in office, and maybe even lead into the Abraham Accords. So yes, he can do that, but he needs to care about the country, Israel, more than he cares about himself. The moment that this will happen, that's quite simple. Sadly, for the last 2 years or even more, he didn't show that he cares about the country. He just cares about
Yeah. You and me, no one common.
Jillian Michaels, the former star of The Biggest Loser and now a MAGA influencer, was on Newsnight last week, and we were having a discussion on the show about Trump's attempts to influence parts of American culture, like the Smithsonian, like the Kennedy Center, and the arts, when suddenly the conversation turned to slavery and race. And Jillian argued that everything in the culture has become now about race.
He's not whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No,
Okay.
he's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does.
Then what really shocked all of us at the table was that she seemed to try to be minimizing the impact of racism and slavery on American history.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
But it was a system of white
Do
supremacy.
you realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to
I didn't
try
realize
to
this was
end
controversial.
slavery?
It's crazy because, like, I'm American. When I talk about slavery, I'm not talking about slavery that happened. I mean, unless that's the actual subject. If the subject is about slavery or the transatlantic slave in all the other countries that participated in it, then that'll be a whole different discussion. But when we're talking about these exhibits are more so pointing to what happened in America. We're American, so I don't give a fuck about what happened. As far as the other countries, if that was a topic, I'll be glad to talk about it. But like, when this conversation about his beef with these exhibits for the Smithsonian is more so, it just makes there we go. It's more so, it just makes America look bad, when in actuality it makes America look honest. The fact that they are able to just say, here's history, don't run from it, like, learn from it. Like, it's fucking crazy.
Incredibly misleading statistic, because even the Americans who did not own slaves also participated in slavery by benefiting from the economic system of slavery, the political system of slavery, and culturally treating Black people as if they were not human. But Jillian didn't acknowledge any of those things, and that, I think, is really what shocked so many of us at the table. Since then, she's doubled down, and she's even said that she had reached out to the White House before coming on the show to ask them about which Smithsonian exhibits they wanted to dispute. She acknowledged that none of the talking points provided by the White House, according to her, had to do with slavery, and yet she still decided to downplay it at the Newsnight table. Fast forward a couple of days later, and now President Trump is actually also downplaying slavery, suggesting that the Smithsonian talks about it too much and overemphasizes the negative of slavery in the context of American history. Here's the truth. Slavery in the United States was about race.
The negativity of slavery, it's, of course.
It was about white supremacy, and it was really, really bad. Now, Jillian, like many other voters, is entitled to her opinion. She's just not entitled to her own facts. Jillian Michaels, the former
I think that's
star-
the biggest problem that I got with Jillian Michaels. Well, no, there's plenty of problems that I have with Jillian Michaels. I guess one of the biggest ones is her. I don't know. I'm trying to be nice about it.
The Museum of African American History and
I'm
Culture.
gonna hold back on that one.
I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Last
Oh,
week,
this is. I
on
think
this
this is
show,
the
a
actual
guest
one that
of
she was
white
talking about.
What we try to do on this program is create a platform for discussion and debate.
Not a
Debate
grocery.
that reflects the very real differences that exist in this country. It's what echo chambers in our society fail to do, frankly. But on this topic, it's
Thank you. And I've seen CNN get a lot of flack, got a lot of heat for the people they've had on Abby Phillips panels. But like, I agree. Enough of the echo chambers don't work. Nobody learns from echo chambers. They just yawn from echo chambers. I mean, if you want to go to a room where it's just educational, that's fine. But sometimes if you want to go to have a conversation about X, Y, and Z, sometimes you're going to need opposing opinions. And while some opposing opinions can be radical and extreme, you would still need, it's still good for people to see those opposing opinions. So I don't have an issue with CNN having a Jillian Michaels or Scott Jennings or whoever on to debate or to have these conversations, because I don't believe echo chambers. Echo chambers don't work. in my opinion. It's like it's
It's
pointless.
important to say objectively, slavery was indeed bad. It was evil.
Like in an echo chamber, we can all agree slavery bad. Okay, boo. That's it. Like, but like, I would like people to engage with people who disagree because there are going to be other people who are watching.
Nation's original sin. And it is impossible to understand the true history of this country without fully grappling with slavery's impact. Simply because of their birthplace and the color of their skin, the bodies and spirits of Black men, women, and children were exploited for profit and power. They were forced onto ships, bound by shackles and collars that ripped off their skin. One older man described it as iron entering our souls. Some chose to jump into the waters infested with sharks rather than feel that iron. Now, once they arrived on this very soil, they were forced to work by way of the whip, despite being starved, sleep deprived, threatened, tortured, physically and psychologically. They were auctioned off, humiliated, fearful, and separated from their families and their children. Black women and girls were raped and sexually assaulted. Many were brutally murdered and mutilated. Now, this endured for decades, centuries. And even in the places where slavery was not legal, institutions from our banks to universities were built on enslaved labor in both the North and in the South. And for many of the white Americans who did not personally own slaves, they benefited from a caste system that concentrated wealth and political power in their hands. So,
Yep. Billions upon billions upon billions of dollars built billions of dollars worth of free labor built off the backs of slaves. So
when we acknowledge
literally the foundation of America is built, has been built on the back of slaves.
the existence of Black people who operated George Washington's Mount Vernon or the Black hands that built the White House, we are acknowledging the existence, the perseverance, and the contributions of the souls that white supremacy sought to erase. Those people built families, they developed a culture, they were the keepers of the faith, cultivators of community. And they are the ones who deserve credit for forcing America to rid itself of the stain of slavery. Now, all of this information, these stories are from the Smithsonian's African American History Museum. And I share this not as a lecture for you, but as a lesson. America, the superpower, is largely possible only because of the superpowers of people who went lifetimes without the same rights of generations who were boosted from their backs. True history should include everything. Yes, the evils and the horrors too. And museums are supposed to be places that protect those stories, the images, the lessons, the very things that inform so much of our current state of our republic, from racism to poverty. No matter how painful, or in the president's words, how horrible the lesson. Now, just listen to one formerly enslaved man describe what slavery is like in his own words.
You know what I'd rather do? If I thought that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog.
Oh,
You're not a thing but a dog.
We are here in the studio with our panel, Leah Reitberger. I was actually surprised to see President Trump basically saying the quiet part out loud. That this
Sorry, I had to speed it up. I'm sorry to speed it up. Hey, babes, how you doing?
review of the Smithsonian is not about even just something vague about reviewing history, make sure that it's fair. He wants to make it so that it talks less about slavery. What does that say to you?
Well, I think it's an effort. It's part of a larger effort to both stainwash and whitewash American history, and essentially erase all of the parts and disappear all of the parts that make Americans, that make President Trump uncomfortable, that feel distasteful, that are a reflection of the actual real and horrific parts of our history. And I find it a little ironic. You know, earlier today, as I was listening to some of the commentary, my first thought was, wait a second, I wonder if the president has actually ever visited any of the Smithsonian museums. And then I remembered that in 2017, he actually took a tour of the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Let me just play actually what he said during that tour. Listen to this. During that tour.
Museum of African American History and Culture, right here in Washington, D.C. It's a new, beautiful Smithsonian museum that serves as a shining example of African Americans' incredible contributions to our culture, our society, and our history. It also tells of the great struggle for freedom and equality
Looks
that
like my
prevailed against the sins of
connection
slavery and the injustice of discrimination.
went bad
The work
on
and love of the
YouTube.
people who
Fuck,
helped
I think
create
my
such a
YouTube
masterpiece
connection went
is a testament to the legacy of so many leaders it honors.
So was it that he didn't believe what he read from the
Yeah, my
teleconference
YouTube
recording?
connection
Or
went
what?
out.
You know, I'm really struggling to understand in a lot of ways, particularly given that the tour that he took with director Lonnie Bunch was actually a reflection of really the mastery that, and really the care and the patience that historians, the scholars, the curators put into the Museum of African American History and Culture. It is not just about the horrors of slavery, although it tells that very important story. It actually follows this really brilliant model where you move through the museum and it tells the story not just of American enslaved Americans
I don't
in
think he
America,
has the
but also of
the
the resilience, of the
capacity, right?
triumph. And in doing
I don't
so,
think
it tells
I don't
stories
think there's
very
anything
much
in there.
about democracy and about a quest for democracy and the way that Americans both built this country,
process
but also
what's going
the story and the
on.
narrative of like a truly American experience. And so for the president, I think, to just simply erase that and push that away tells it, particularly after praising it a few years ago, tells us that this is part of a much larger agenda. This is part of a much larger agenda to erase things that really I think the country is just not refuses to deal with and is really uncomfortable with.
I mean, he said as much by ending this post with, "This country cannot be woke because woke is broke." He says we have to have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including our museums. Why is he equating talking about slavery with woke?
Well, look, I think, let me just start this conversation by saying that my personal view is slavery was a reprehensible institution. I agree with your words that it was our original sin. We also fought a war to eradicate it and to get over it
But
as a country. And that was a necessary thing that happened and a lot of people died. And
I think there's a but coming.
we did eradicate it, and that's a good thing. I think what he's asking is, in our museums, what defines us? Are we going to be defined by the worst moment or the worst institution or the worst mistake we ever made? Or are we going to be defined by what we've done moving forward to get over it and to become the greatest nation on the earth? My belief is that he wants to look at these museums, not because he wants to do away with the idea that slavery occurred, but that he wants to ask a very simple question. Are we going to present ourselves as being exceptional or not? And I think he believes there is an effort by some to continue to try to define us from our worst moment instead of try to focus and define us based on our best moments, which started when we eradicated slavery and began to move forward as the light of the world. And so that's what I think.
Museums, that's what makes us an exceptional nation, is because they tell the history and the story of our country, and therefore, you know, these horrible, horrific moments in our history. The original sin, as Abby talked about, when it comes to slavery, has, you know, we of course did eradicate it, but look where we've come today. And I think those museums, like to your point, make America exceptional, and museums all around the world that document atrocities, whether it be, you know, from Nazi Germany to eradicating slavery here in the United States, you have to learn the lessons of the past, and to deny it is to defend it.
I don't think he's denying it, and Bachi may want to comment on this as well, but I think what he wants to ask is a simple question. As we present our history, are we spending most of our time focused on something terrible? Or are we going to spend more time as we enter our 250th anniversary focused on what this country has done to improve the lives of every single person who lives here? We are the light of the world.
About the anniversary.
The question I ask when I hear you say that is, why, I mean, the idea that slavery happened, it's hard to understand what we've overcome if you don't even talk about what it was. You know, I think that kind of waters down the whole
I don't think anybody's proposing that we ignore that it happened.
I think that the problem is that there are people, and Scott used the term a couple of times, and I don't think it was meant with any type of ill intent, but he said, you know, we got over it. And I think that's the problem. I think that there are a lot of people in this country who believe that for some reason we got over it. I mean, the fact is that American chattel slavery is vastly different than what Jillian Michaels and others talk about when they talk about slavery around the world. I mean, the chattel slavery system that we had was extremely transactional. It was actually codified in law, and it was based upon the color and race, as you so eloquently pointed out in your opening. And so not only when you think about that portion of where we are, 26 of our first 30 Supreme Court justices own slaves. The people who are on our money every single day own slaves. United States presidents, members of the United States Congress own slaves. Lehman Brothers, we're not far from Wall Street, own slaves. Brooks Brothers suits that we wear own slaves. So not only are we talking about the epicenter and foundation of where our country was built, we have to acknowledge that. But even more importantly, and this is where I believe that Scott and I can find agreement on this issue. I mean, Breon and Megan Walker, two of my best friends in the world, their dad was the first African-American SGA president at the University of South Carolina, right? He was an exec at IBM, but he was one of the first, right? We're still talking about first that emerged and stood on those shoulders. I tell the story often about my mom and dad. My mom helped desegregate high schools. In Hamilton High School in Memphis, Tennessee, my dad shot in the Orangeburg Massacre. This is a part of my story. This isn't some faint, distant history. And so the reason I bring that up is because I think that American exceptionalism talks about the fact that black folk helped, enslaved folk helped build this country for what it is. They built Washington, D.C., but all of us are around this table. Abby, myself, all of us, not just Abby, myself, all of us are around this table because of the sacrifices and the blood and the sweat and the tears these people poured.
On the all-time list of weirdest culture wars, this one's got to rank pretty high.
Crackle Barrel, I'm not covering that shit. I don't